Today we're diving into a topic that's not just fascinating, but also incredibly important for the health and well-being of our four-legged companions. And that is why dogs are meat eaters. And we'll explore the ancestry, physiology, and even discuss some common misconceptions, especially the kind that your vet might be perpetuating. Plus, I'll share our personal experience with feeding our German Shepherd Ribeye a raw meat diet and how that contrasts with the balanced kibble diet most dogs are on today. Are you ready to revolutionize your health and reconnect to your primal self? Welcome to the Primal Shift Podcast. I'd like to thank Peluva for sponsoring this week's episode. Peluva is the brand behind my favorite zero-drop minimalist shoes with the distinctive five-toe design that allows for correct dynamic movement of the foot when walking or running. The latter is impossible when toes are encased in a single box, even a white box. I love my Peluvas because they give me the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use them all day, even on hard surfaces. Peluvas are also incredibly stylish and I really like how they look. I've been using my Peluvas during intense CrossFit workouts, while walking the dog, and even during a recent 8-day trip to Disney World, and they've been unbelievably comfortable. They feel like walking barefoot on a putting green. Now you can try a pair of Peluvas with no risk by visiting peluva.com. That's peluva.com. Make sure to use code KUMMER for 15% off your first pair. And now back to the episode. Now to understand why dogs are carnivores, we need to look at the ancestry. Dogs are direct descendants of wolves, which are obligate carnivores. And this means that their entire physiology is designed to thrive on a diet composed mainly of meat. Maybe not exclusively, but mainly, and we'll get to that. So let's start with their teeth. Dogs have sharp, pointed teeth designed for tearing flesh, not grinding plant material. Their jaws are powerful and capable of exerting significant pressure. And I know this firsthand because just this morning I had to pry one of our turkeys out of our neighbor's dog's mouth. And I can tell you, it took all of my strength to pry that jaw open and get our turkey out. But, their jaw strength is ideal for crushing bones and tearing meat. And unlike herbivores and omnivores, dogs lack flat molars needed to grind grains and other plant matter efficiently. Next, let's talk about their digestive tract. Dogs have a relatively short digestive system compared to herbivores and even omnivores. And this is because meat is easier and quicker to digest. And their stomachs are highly acidic with a pH level that can drop to around 1 to 2. And that helps them break down meat and bones and, more importantly, kill harmful bacteria that might be present in raw meat. And I think maybe that's where the misconception comes from, that a dog's mouth is incredibly clean. I don't think it's incredibly clean, but it is such an inhospitable environment for germs, and that extends down to the digestive tract. So they can eat a lot of things that would make us sick, and they don't, simply because all of that stuff kills the bacteria and pathogens, and so they don't make it through the digestive system. Now, their small and large intestines are also much shorter, indicating a digestive system optimized for meat consumption rather than plant material. A dog's gut simply isn't designed to ferment plant matter like an herbivores would be. And the short digestive tract and acidic environment further reinforce that dogs are built to process meat, not grains or vegetables. Now, you might be wondering, if dogs are such clear-cut carnivores, why do so many veterinarians recommend a quote-unquote balanced diet that includes grains and other plant-based ingredients? And the unfortunate truth is that much of the veterinary curriculum is influenced, if not outright sponsored, by commercial pet food companies. These companies have a vested interest in promoting their products, which often contain grains, fillers, and processed ingredients that aren't natural for a dog's diet. Now, in our experience, we contacted over a dozen vets in our area, and not a single one recommended a raw meat diet. And that was before we got Ribeye. Just wanted to find out what is a vet who understands, canine nutrition properly and who appreciates that dogs are carnivores for the most part. Not a single one said that's a good idea. They all recommended against it in favor of a more balanced kibble-based diet, which is absolute BS. The problem is that, the vet's advice doesn't align with the biological evidence or the natural history of canines. It's a classic example of how commercial interests can influence medical recommendations. And, that obviously not only happens in the canine world. We've seen this with human medicine and medical advice as well, especially over the last couple of years. So what happens when you feed a dog the diet they were designed for? Well, let me tell you about our experience with Ribeye, our German Shepherd. We switched him to a raw diet right after we got him from the breeder, consisting of 3 pounds of a mix of muscle meat, organs, and bones from various animals, meaning beef, lamb, goat, beaver, even some sardines, turkey, you name it. And so he eats 3 pounds now. He is like 90 pounds or so. Obviously, he didn't eat 3 pounds when he was a pup, when he was significantly lighter. And we also give him 3 to 5 egg yolks from our own hens each day, together with his meat. And sometimes we also add in some raw milk kefir, some bovine colostrum, some berries from our garden, and occasionally even cooked sweet potato. And when we butcher rabbits, he gets the whole rabbit, including the stomach and its contents. And that's interesting because that kind of gives you an idea of what dogs can get away with in terms of eating plant materials, because our dog hasn't been influenced by commercials, by social media or anything. He just eats what feels natural to him, and that includes stomach contents, which means partially digested plant matter. So you might wonder, why the extras? Why feed him extra stuff other than meat? And there are 2 reasons for that. One is we like seeing we like to find out what he eats when given the choice, because dogs are very all animals really are, mostly, maybe not goats, but everything else, they're instinctual eaters. So they eat what's good for them and they don't eat what's not so good for them. And so we can kind of figure out, okay, what can he have, and be okay with. And the second reason that kind of, dovetails right into that is cutting down on feed cost. Feeding raw is incredibly expensive. We'll talk about that in a bit. Now, here's the thing though. I'm not entirely convinced that dogs should never eat plants, Having seen how Ribeye consumes the stomach contents of rabbits, I don't mind him having access to partially digested or fermented plant matter. He also sometimes nibbles on grass, and he usually does that and then throws up. So I don't know if that's a kind of a digestive, aid type of thing, or a medicinal thing, or maybe, to throw up something he ate before that he shouldn't have. I don't know, but he does that. And we let him do that because, if it wasn't good, he wouldn't be doing it. Now, his primary nutrition obviously comes from meat, organs, and bones, which is what his body is designed to process. And the results, well, Ribeye is in excellent health. His coat is shiny, his teeth are clean without us ever having to brush them, and he's full of energy. And this stands in stark contrast to many other dogs on kibble diets who often suffer from dental issues, dull coats, and various health problems. And, here's the thing. Canine health in the US is facing a significant crisis, much like human health. With diseases like diabetes, cancer, and obesity becoming increasingly rampant among dogs, well, and cats too. Think about that. This is not only a human issue. We see the very same side effects of a crappy, inappropriate diet in our pets. That's ridiculous, Over half of the dogs in the country are overweight or obese, leading to a higher prevalence of chronic conditions that severely impact their quality of life and drives up, medical bills, obviously. Obesity in particular is a major contributor to the rise in diabetes among dogs, as excess weight strains their bodies and disrupts insulin regulation. Additionally, cancer has become one of the leading causes of death in dogs, with estimates suggesting that nearly 1 in 4 dogs will develop some form of cancer in their lifetime. These alarming statistics highlight the urgent need for a reevaluation of common dietary practices and a greater focus on preventive care to improve the overall health and longevity of our canine companions. In other words, feed those dogs an appropriate diet, and have medical professional give actually professional advice. The problem is we don't get that, not from human doctors and not from vets. And that's a huge issue. And that means you need to take control of not only your own health, but also your dog's health, and just apply common sense. What did are the ancestors of dogs eating, it's meat. And yes, dogs have been domesticated a long time ago. They have certainly evolved, they have changed, and they have maybe, also adapted, some of their dietary needs. But looking at the physique of a dog, the mouth, the jaw, the teeth, the digestive tract, there is nothing to suggest that our dogs have become omnivores. That's absolute bullshit, And anytime I go to a doctor, be it a human doctor or a vet, and they tell me, oh, you shouldn't be feeding your dog meat and you shouldn't be eating so much meat yourself. And, I'm like, look at you, look at the pets under your care, look at your own pets maybe, and look at my dog and look at me, and you tell me that I am eating the wrong things. It's absolutely hilarious. So, think for yourself is what I'm trying to say here. Now, but let's talk a bit about why kibble is so terrible. Well, first off, kibble is loaded with processed grains and seed oils, which are far from what a dog would naturally consume. These ingredients can, much like in humans, lead to inflammation, obesity, and a host of other health problems. And one of the things is, the high heat used in processing kibble destroys many of the natural nutrients. Those few very difficult to absorb nutrients that are in plant matter are destroyed using the high heat during the processing and then are synthetically added back. This isn't real food. It's a highly processed piece of crap that is designed for convenience and shelf life, but not for your dog's health. Dogs, like most animals, instinctively know what's good for them. They haven't been brainwashed by years of commercials telling them what to eat. If you put a bowl of raw meat and organs in front of a dog alongside with a bowl of kibble, I guarantee they'll go for the meat every time. It's what their bodies are telling them to eat. Now, feeding ribeye this way isn't cheap. He eats about $400 worth of meat each month. This is a significant amount of money, and it's one of the many reasons we're working towards raising 100% of the meat we consume as a family, including for our dog. That's why we have livestock, and why we want to even raise more livestock, especially larger livestock that can produce a significant amount of meat so we can feed ribeye. And even though it's super expensive, I think the benefits we see in his health and well-being make it worth every penny. And it's the reason why we only have one dog and not 2 or 3 or 4, because we could not be feeding so many dogs an appropriate diet, right? And even though I would like to have more dogs, but maybe once we have more animals, we'll have another dog so we can feed them all meat. Now, it's worth noting that there are several versions of raw feeding, including PMR, which stands for Prey Model Raw, and BARF, which stands for Biologically Appropriate Raw Food. And each has its proponents, but they all share a focus on feeding dogs the diet they were naturally designed to eat. So I wouldn't necessarily sweat, picking between those two. PMR is basically only meat, organs and bones. BARF can include some vegetable and plant matter, and we mostly do PMR, but with some exceptions, as mentioned earlier, like, the kefir, some sweet potatoes, some berries, maybe the stomach contents of, rabbits, etc. So those go more into the BARF side. And I think BARF is more doable from a financial perspective because you can prepare some of those veggies yourself. You cook your sweet potatoes, etc. That can lower the cost a little bit, but not by far, because your dog is still going to eat predominantly meat and some extra if you choose to. Now, before we wrap up, it's worth mentioning that cats, much like dogs, are also obligate carnivores. Feeding them anything but a diet predominantly composed of meat can have serious negative impacts on their health. And I know, because I've been a cat person for most of my life, and I've always fed them, kibble. With the last cat, now thinking back and knowing what I know now, I feel guilty, really, of feeding that cat such a chunk diet of mostly rancid, probably expired kibble. We had, bought it in bulk and had it forever, and it was terrible. And, he at some point disappeared and probably died somewhere in the woods because he was just too sick and fat and obese and all the things that you don't want to have. Again, while feeding raw can be expensive and time consuming, the benefits, to your pet's health are undeniable. So if you care about your dog's well-being, or cats for that matter, if you're a cat person, it's at least worth considering, maybe partially if you can't do it all, but the thing is, dogs should not be eating kibble, no grains, no seed oils, no processed junk food. And Our goal really is to raise as much of that food our dog consumes as possible and as much of the food that we consume so we can have full control over our health, our dog's health, without breaking the bank. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode has given you some food for thought, pun intended, about what you're feeding your dog. If you've had experiences with raw feeding or want to learn more, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep questioning the status quo.
Coming up on the next episode of the Primal Shift podcast, get ready for a deep dive into the world of martial arts and meditation with special guest Jeff Patterson, founder of Northwest Fighting Arts and Portland Tai Chi Academy. Jeff has spent over 36 years mastering the art of yielding, a transformative concept that blends physical, mental, and emotional strength. In this episode, Jeff shares how the practice of yielding can enhance your life, whether you're in a heated martial arts battle or navigating everyday challenges. From self-defense to mental clarity, this episode will leave you thinking about the power of being present and strategic. Don't miss it. Tune in to discover how you can integrate the ancient wisdom of yielding into your modern life.